Hello, welcome to this episode of Community Voices UE on Civic Space TV. I am Billy Molisa. I want to welcome all of you to this special edition where we're discussing a matter so important, especially in the progress of our society, particularly in the academic sector. Once again, I am Philip Molisa, and as we get into this conversation where we're going to discuss about the opportunities and challenges that may arise in government's proposal to allow the use of mobile phones in schools. And at this level, we talk about primary schools, our pupils out there. Then the secondary schools, we know it is until now illegal in those schools for a student, pupil to have a mobile phone, to use it for any academic related work, whether it's research in class, whether it's getting work, anything related to academics at school. Mobile phones are not allowed, and government has been having conversations around allowing students to have mobile phones, pupils to have mobile phones, and we want to assess how this can be a positive, thing for the country or a negative thing, and what can be the way forward in that particular matter. I have a couple of you. I will give, before we get into the conversation, you will talk to us about yourselves and where you are and what's eye-catching in your particular location right now. It's very important that we get to really to get a feel of your environment, and we relate as if we're in the same place, even though we are very many kilometers apart. I'll start with Patience Sharon Bisikwa. Sharon, greetings. Where are you and how is your environment?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Sharon, and I am thrilled to be on this platform. It's really nice, and yeah, thank you so much.
Where are you and what can we know about your particular location today?
Thank you so much. I am a student of political science at Chambogo University, and currently I'm an internee at Education. It's an international organization that works in the education space to foster education among teachers. Yeah, so currently I'm at Star Education in Tinda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for education, and we can't wait to hear more from what Star Education has to say about this particular subject. Do you agree with pupils, people in P3, people in P5, people in P7 having mobile phones in class, and how can it play? Thank you, Sharon. Let me bring in Kasesian. It's interesting. I hope it's the way he said Kasesian, as in referring to Kasese in Uganda. Please, let's keep our videos on. We can only put up the audio. Let's keep the videos on, and we get to interact with each other so well. Kasesian, unmute and talk to us. How are you? Where are you? And what can we know about a particular location now?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim. The tagline is Kasesian, Kim-based Kasesian. Kasesian is just a tagline, and I'm proud to be born in Kasese. I'm in Kasese, where the marathon happened recently, and we have a cool weather. I'm a journalist by profession, and I currently work with RTV, that's Rwenzori TV, in Kasese district.
How is Kasese right now? Talk to us about maybe the weather, maybe anything that is eye-catching out there.
Kasese is cool this morning. We have some upcoming events. The Theluji. Theluji is a festival that happens in every August or after the marathon. Theluji talks about our cultural institutions around, our culture in Kasese, and people exhibiting what they have to show. So it is happening next month on 5th of September. So preparations are ongoing.
Thank you so much, the Kasessian. Rather interesting, the pride you have in Kasese. And indeed, it is a significant place in this country in terms of geography, nature, the beauty of the mountains and the water bodies and the wildlands out there.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful place, and indeed, we need to harness on that opportunity to benefit as a country. Thank you so much, Kasessian Joken. Nyakecho. Greetings, talk to us and bring us to speed on where you are and what we can know about your particular location today.
Yes, Mr. Philip, I'm so humbled to be part of the show. I'm called Nyakecho Dora. Hope I'm heard.
Yes, you are.
Am I clear? Okay, I'm
Yes,
called
you are.
Nyakecho Dora. I'm in SETA right now. I'm a social worker,
SETA.
but I'm a parent. I'm a mother. And right now I'm home. I'm at my home. I do a bit of farming around. I'm a parent of 3. My daughter is in Form 2. The youngest is in primary 3. I'm so humbled to be part of this discussion.
Thank you so much,
it.
Nyakecho Dora. We're glad to hear from you. You said you're in SETA, and I like it that you have your video on. For purposes of having a better video, how I wish you could just turn around where you are facing. So you have your phone where you are and your body where the phone is. That will give us a better view because that's the direction of light. Thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us this morning, and we can't wait to hear from you as a mother on what you think about these particular events that are unfolding in the country. Lastly, I think I'll call in Priscilla to talk to us, and we can kick off with the conversation. Yes, Priscilla. And indeed, once again, I request you to keep your videos on even when you are speaking. It's important if you don't mind. Priscilla.
Okay, thank you so much, Phil. My name is Priscilla Amoge, and about this topic, it's quite an interesting one. That as teachers, as nation builders, we come in to navigate the challenges that could either affect our education system and then see a way forward. Currently, I teach at Amos College School, Bukadia, and I'm very so much glad to be part of this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. You didn't tell us where you are and probably what we can know about your particular environment right now, if you don't mind, and maybe if you can be a little louder.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Right now, I do teach at Amos College School, Bukadia. That is where I teach. Yes, but at the moment, I'm within the environment, within Bukadia.
You are in Bukadia Amos College. First of all, congratulations. I know you won that tournament. Is this Fiesta football tournament? Congratulations, and I hope the celebrations are still ongoing.
Yeah, the celebrations are still ongoing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now, colleagues, the subject we have at hand is one that is very critical, especially in such a time where we're talking about the information age. Many people in the earlier days were calling it the .com era. People are talking about artificial intelligence, people are talking about going to space, people are talking about innovations in the tech industry. And we know if you look around the world today, the people that are decision makers or making some of global news that we see on a daily are people in the tech industry. If you want to talk about who is rich, you go to people in tech, you go to Elon Musk, you go to Mark Zuckerberg, you go to Jeff Bezos. These are people that are invested in tech. If you want to talk to global leaders, everything they're discussing is technology. And here we are in a country where even using a mobile phone in some places is illegal. And for that matter, schools. You found with us, I remember a couple of years ago when I was in high school or even in primary, their colleagues were found with small mobile phones, and the first punishment you would get was a suspension or sometimes an expulsion because of having a mobile phone. At the same time, we want to position our country to compete at the global stage. When you hear conversations like allowing pupils and students to access and use mobile phones in schools, what comes to your mind, especially So I'll start with you, who is a teacher, Priscilla. If you woke up tomorrow and your pupils, your students now in class at AMS have mobile phones, what do you expect to see? How would that kind of class look like for you as a teacher?
Okay, thank you so much, Phil, about that question. First of all, we do appreciate the fact that the trend we are in is a trend of technology, whereby for someone to be fit for the trend, you need to have those basic skills that can enable you operate a smartphone or a computer at the end of the day. But then I believe that as a nation, before we can take a step towards making these gadgets compulsory or acceptable in school, there are procedures that we need to take. First of all, what we need to put in mind is that do we have the laws that can really protect these learners to achieve the intended goals? Because if we just leave them with these smartphones, not all of them are going to use them for the intended purpose. So what can a particular school or institution actually do to see that these phones are used in the appropriate manner? We do agree that, of course, at the end of the day, what we could be fighting for could be for a common goal. But then if it's not managed, then that means we are wasting time at the end of the day. Having a phone in class during an interaction or an engagement with learners, maybe purposely to learn a specific app or an application on a phone, could be very good for an institution to embrace. But then it would be of a bad impact or wastage of time when learners misuse these gadgets that we actually give to them. So I believe that before we can move on that trend, we set in some rules or regulations that help the learners to use these gadgets in appropriate manner, and that would be okay. But if this is not yet put on ground, then I feel we shall be wasting.
When you talk about the rules and regulations, so briefly you say if we could have the right rules in place, it is okay to allow these learners to have mobile phones. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if these rules are put in place, let's take that these learners come with the phones, and then maybe the phones are given a specific storage, like the learners are not left with them. And then when it's time for these sessions, they are given. That could ease the monitoring of how learners actually use these gadgets. But if we just leave for them to own them or to handle them or to be with them 24 hours, then I believe it's going to be a more disaster than when we leave them, than when we take the phones and put in the custody.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to bring in the Pasesian here, Joachim. You see, Joachim, you live in a world, and as a journalist, even when you are making stories for your TV or something like that, you are making stories from across the world. Today, you will go to any TV station and they are talking about the war in Ukraine. They are talking about maybe an election that is soon happening in the United States. You're talking about an event that happened in China, or perhaps now like the events that are coming. We had the Rwenzori Marathon. It was an international activity, but you have pupils and students in Kasese that cannot use a mobile phone, that do not, as we speak, if they do not access any information from maybe their teacher or anyone, they do not know how that marathon was, the significance it had, both in terms of marketing the country, bringing in the tourists and so many others, and the interest they can pick in the country. What is your view of this whole conversation in trying to have or to allow these students have access to mobile phones? Yes, Kasesian.
Yes, thank you so much. First and foremost, I would love to say that the world we are living in now is digital. Therefore, it wouldn't be a bad idea for government to allow students have their gadgets in classes. But the big query here is one: how are those schools going to regulate the wrongdoing or the wrong misuse of phones? Because these phones are going to expose them to very many obscene things on those phones. Like recently, you saw what happened in on a show somewhere. I think it was in Kampala, where ladies almost grabbed this Elvis man on stage, and to some extent, these young girls, these primary kids, will learn to copy those things through phones. Phones will expose them to TikTok. TikTok has a lot of dirty things, dirty content, and therefore students will even fail to concentrate on what they are supposed to be concentrating on. I don't know how these schools will handle this, that maybe some apps will not be in those phones, but how? How will they remove those apps? After school, these students will go again back home, use the same phones, or download apps and view what they are not supposed to view.
If you allow me, for example, when you talk about students or people having access to these obscene things, and the bigger question now in this particular subject is morality. Look, for the last so many years that these kids have not had the mobile phones and the access to whatever you are talking about, we know that the morality of our society continuously has degenerated. We know that the levels of child pregnancy are very high in our country, extremely high in some of the regions of the country. And we know that these people do not have mobile phones. How has the failure or the denial of the access to mobile phones to these young people in the different communities helped them to keep the morality? Because, I mean, are you saying the people you were talking about on Ian Levy's concert had mobile phones when they were in primary, but they're able to do what they do now?
Now, there is a saying that says, you spare the rod and spoil the child. You know, you see the rate of immorality increasing. Now, imagine when people have, imagine when even students don't have phones. Now, what will happen when they have the phones with them now? They will be exposed to a lot of things. Secondly, that the rate of immorality, one, is caused by poverty. Most families are facing too many challenges of poverty, and therefore they have no time even to care about their children. The children do whatever they want. But bringing in a gadget in students, especially primary kids, it will be spoiling them the more, because honestly speaking, they will be exposed to a lot of dirty content from the media.
Thank you. We build a little more on that conversation. I want to bring in here a mother, Mrs. Nyakechu. Your babies are born in a world where they have to compete for an opportunity with the babies of Donald Trump, with the babies of Elon Musk, with the babies of Joachim here, with my babies and the babies of everyone in the world. But they are here in Uganda where they're not allowed to access the mobile phone for class, for study. What is your view on the conversation that we should start allowing these young people to have mobile phones for study purposes? Yes, Mami Nyampechu.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm humbled to be part of that discussion. Now, with the increased rate of technology in the whole world, not only in Uganda, our children, our kids have to be allowed like access to phones. Access to phones helps to widen the educational learning coverage. Like there is a lot of learning. It increases their learning capabilities, especially these little ones. They learn from seeing, they learn from actions. It's very easy for them to learn while seeing, while touching, which is not the case in when the teacher goes in class and just speaks out. But if they're learning at the same time watching and seeing what they're being taught, it's very easy for them to grasp it. It's very easy for them to take it, absorb whatever is being taught to them. Mobile phones or social media is introduced in schools, it will help these kids to improve their learning. on their learning capabilities. Even research, it improves research. Like most of our teachers in Uganda, the that are given to the children in class are limited. But if children are given access to these mobile, regulated properly in a good manner, these children will have wide research about every topic that is discussed in class. And the other thing, having access to mobile phones or social media, if I told it is well regulated to our children at school, it motivates them to learn. Since these mobile phones have different apps, different learning apps nowadays, but all these apps are really regulated and they are put these learning mobile phones that are given to children, or the tablets that are given to children in class. Children are really motivated to learn. Then improved communication and collaboration with the teacher. Children are really engaged in learning. The collaboration, the motivation, learning becomes, children become active. If at all the materials of learning are on phone and are regulated, to really be active compared to the kind of talk that teachers come and just talk and nothing is given to them that they can really see. I feel that if at all that mobile phones are regulated in a proper manner, they can really improve the learning of our children in different classes and schools.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is really beautiful to hear from you, Makesho. I think it's a point many people need to look at and really try to draw into. You talk about research, motivation, improving communication, and these are some of the skills that anyone needs to be able to sustain themselves in a rather competitive and complicated employment world we live in. I want to come back to you, Priscilla. You know, we talk about earlier, I think it's Professor Mami brought up the issue of morality, but you see, we need the morals, but we also need to move as a society, as a community, as a country. Until when are we going to be backwards technologically? Until when are we going to deny ourselves some of the basic knowledge that is available out there with a cover of immorality? We want morality, and we keep saying, oh, the country is underdeveloped, or we cannot have some of the global innovations that are driving economies, and our cover is immorality. When are we going to draw that line between the morality and the acceptance that we need to develop and get to the next level as a country? Ms. Priscilla.
Okay, thank you again once more for the opportunity. Now, the fact is that the trend we are going through is technological, and then we really need these applications, these technologies within us. But then the thing is, the charity begins at home. Yes, it's true, we can't be talking about morality, and then trying to gauge them with the technological advancement that is taking on place. So it starts from home as a parent. How do you train your children? How do you nurture them? We are not against the children or learners being exposed to these technological advancements. But then what do you put in place as a guarantee to see that these children do not go beyond their limits? To see that as much as we are embracing technological advancements in our country, we are also maintaining the moral standards of our society. So you as a parent, it's you to start at home. If you're giving this particular child a phone to access, at what age? And then what content are you allowing this particular child, son or daughter of yours to access? You see, most parents, we say that we are in a digital world and therefore we need to expose our children, which is not bad. But then how are you exposing them is the question. You get, for example, a senior one student tells you of the content you really don't expect out of this student. When you try to interrogate, the learner tells you that I got this from TikTok, or I got this from this site and so on. That only shows that you as a parent, first of all, you failed to direct your child at home. So even when we say that we want to maintain the moral standards of our society, it starts from home, just like they say that charity begins at home. I believe that as parents, if we can direct these learners on the right path, if we limit some access to some sites on the phone, then I believe we can be safeguarding these learners. Because it's simple. If you're buying for your child a smartphone, there are apps that you may not install, or there are apps that you may block them from accessing the information there. So if this particular phone is for research and maybe the e-learning, those different apps that aid the learning and the research, and those are the only apps that you leave accessible to your child, then I would agree with you that we should expose these learners to these technologies, but at the same time, be there to guide them on how to use, what to access, and what not to access, in order to balance the embracement of technology, and then also maintaining our moral standards.
If you allow me,
Yes.
if you allow me, now as a teacher, when you say that I have to restrict this child, or as a parent, let my learners be able to access only content in this field and not content in the other field, isn't that restricting the child from the diversity of sectors that they could actually venture into in the future?
Oh, that could also be right. But then we also look at the age. If I am restricting a primary kid from accessing a particular app, it's not the same with a secondary child. That means that we look at also the maturity and then the psychological development of this particular learner, because you don't expect a primary child to have the same thinking as that of a secondary child or a secondary student. So that means that right from primary, there is a particular app or sites that this learner can access that when reaches in secondary, you give way or you open up other apps that can help this learner to actually navigate to the diversity that you're trying to talk about. So because we believe that even still by the time someone is sitting senior 4, some people are not yet upstairs developed well, or their mindset is still young, that some of these contents, they cannot comprehend them and then use them in a better way. So we need to be there as a guiding stick or a yardstick to see that we maintain the moral standards of these learners at the same time, embracing the technological developments that we're trying to do. Take an instance that we really do have computer laboratory. Did I continue?
Thank you, Priscilla. I want to bring Joachim here. You see, we keep talking about restricting, and of course we know that most of the devices now have parental control mechanisms, and you can control what people are able to access or what. But the more we access, the more we deny these people opportunity to access some of this content. Doesn't that risk their ability to innovate in some of the different fields? But also, look, the world we live in, whether today or tomorrow or 10 years to come, these young people will get to experience all these other things that we're trying to deny them to experience today. How about we give them an opportunity to learn how to live with these particular realities, such that by the time they reach those later dates, they are very well conversant of what to do and when to do it and how best to address particular situations. Yes.
Just like I said, we are in a digital world, and therefore we shall not limit these young pupils to access the digitalized world. But here, like my sister Priscilla said, it will have to start with us, the parents, and it will be us, the parents, to enhance those apps that will be particularly used by those students. But if we agree and give them these gadgets wholesomely, without regulating some apps that can be harmful to their health, to their life, then we shall be messing up somehow, somewhere. Because in the end, our eyes are so wicked. They love seeing the bad things that comes across them. The bad things become attracted to the eye. So me as a parent, I'm a parent, I would not deny it, because the world is growing digital, but it will be my responsibility, or any other parent's responsibility, to make sure the apps in those gadgets are for learning purposes, not for every use. If possible, these gadgets would even have app locks, that you have a phone, you have given your little boy or girl a phone, then some apps should be locked. There are those apps that come within the phone production that you will not delete even if you do what. So those apps will need to be locked somewhere, or free somewhere. You let this girl or boy access that app that is very useful to her for her learning purposes. Otherwise, if we let everything open like that, then exposure will spoil the generation, surely.
Thank you so much. I want to bring in Nyakecho here. Nyakecho,
See, we talk about spoiling the child, and it is a very, common and popular phrase in this country. Whereby you give people's phones, you're going to spoil them. But you know that there are good things on these mobile phones, and earlier you did talk about research and motivation and
trying to improve their communication skills. But
if we have these gadgets in school, say the child has a gadget, and
you have to restrict them. What are some of the things you think should not be accessible?
These young people have that gadget, maybe at that particular time. Say if you have a child in primary school, what do you think he or she should not be able to access?
And what then can they access as they proceed to secondary school? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Philip. Now, like Priscilla said, like you regulate the kids according to the age groups. The content that a primary kids takes in is not the same content that the content a secondary school or a campus child takes in. So the first regulator of these mobile phones is supposed to be a parent. Even if they're allowed in school, the first person to regulate the phone, because parents are the ones who are given the task of buying the phone before giving them to their kids to go with them to school. May I have a child who is in a certain school here in Kampala, but they allow laptops, but they don't. They regulate them. There are certain apps that are not allowed to be put in the laptop. There are only learning materials, learning apps that are allowed in those laptops at school. The laptops are given to them during learning time, and after that learning time, they are removed away from them and kept in their office, in the school offices. So, if these phones are to be allowed in schools, parents and teachers are supposed to collaborate. That if at all the phones are given, all those the gadgets are given to the kids in primary, they are supposed to know that the correct learning apps are the ones that are supposed to be installed in those in the mobile phones or the gadgets that are given to the kids that are in primary. I don't expect a parent to give a child a phone who is going to school and leave WhatsApp, TikTok, those social media that are too pornographic, that expose children to immorality. I don't expect a parent to allow a child to go with phones that have those apps in their phones, to allow the kid go with it to school. I support. I would advise parents, they can regulate, so that these phones have different apps, like the little kids in primary or kindergarten, they have these tablets that have the learning, these songs that kids use for learning, the kindergarten, alphabetical, those books, alphabetical books that are in those apps. Those are the apps that are supposed to be installed in the kids' material, like, let me say, primary or kindergarten. Those songs, the songs that those kids sing in school. Then when you go to secondary, the Google, learning things of Google, the research. If parents regulate and report it to the teachers, I think the phones can do. They can really help our children in school if at all they are properly regulated with the apps according to the different age groups. Because the study materials are campus and not the study materials that are used in secondary or in primary. Of course, the apps are different. So if parents regulate those apps properly and they carefully monitor their children, I think we can always be on the right track and enjoy the digital era with the kids as well. Because nowadays, these kids can operate the phones more than even now the parents themselves. So if the freedom, a lot of freedom is given to them to operate and access any immorality, anything on the phone, that's the bad side of it. But if at all the phones are given to them for education purposes, strictly education and learning, then they can be of more good than harm. That's what I think.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vera. Patience. And you've been I want to bring you in here. As a university student, you now have 100% access to your gadget, whichever kind of gadget you want to see in class, even sometimes in the examination room when you're having the open book examinations. What are some of the things you can point to and say that if I had been given this gadget earlier, maybe in my A level, maybe in O level, I would have been better in this particular field. I would have had this, and I think these people that are at that level, they are missing out on this particular value or skill because they cannot access these gadgets in the classroom, especially.
You still realize that even when some of us have the gadgets, you realize that most students don't have the gadgets. They don't have the laptops, others don't have the smartphones to use, others join campus, they join different universities, but then still they come with the small phones, then later get the smartphones. So the question I would love to pose to all of us here is, yes, this strategy is so good, but who is going to buy the phones for the learners? As in, because we look at most parents, not all of us still earn good salaries to maybe buy phones for the learners. Who is going to buy the phones for the parents? Yes, it's a good strategy, and even at university, we are advised or encouraged to carry laptops, smartphones, but you still realize that there are still poor students who can't afford the laptop. And this makes them go to different cafes to do their coursework and maybe pay in a lot of money. So this strategy that the government is trying to bring on board of introducing the use of phones in schools is really good. But I really don't support it, because I don't know if the host can allow me share something with all of us here to have a look at. I mean, you look at, let's not only concentrate on the central part, but let's also look at the other parts, the other regions of the country. We have very poor structures in schools. So I really think that government maybe should maybe look at those before thinking about this strategy. And I really want to pose a question, Mr. Moderator. Where is this pressure coming in from? I mean the pressure of introducing the use of phones in secondary schools. Is it pressure from the international schools? Is it a necessity? So you really realize that there are gaps in that. Maybe I think there's
if you allow me,
yes.
for example, when you ask about why there is a necessity or not, the justification, firstly, you could talk about the highly technological world we are living in today.
Yes.
You and I know that at the university now, some of the students you study with are international students, they study online. You know that if you have to do coursework at school, you have to do some typing and some uploading somewhere.
You know that some of the work is shared online. You know that if you have to apply for university, you apply online. And these are some of the realities these young people will have to face. If you're in senior 4, 3 years later. If you're in senior 6, less than a year later. If you're in P7, about 10 years later, you have to face these realities. And we are saying, how about these young people are given the opportunity to get this skill such that they do not have a lot of pressure when they get to these positions where it is a must to use these technological devices? What's your view?
Thank you so much, moderator. Yes, as you talked about the reality, I a humble background, and my parents are not able to give me what? The laptop, the smartphone. Yes, it's there. We need the laptops in schools, we need the smartphones to access information, do courseworks, yeah, and so forth. But then, what if personally as a student, I don't have the laptop? My parents are not able to give me the laptop to come and use it at campus to do different courseworks and stuff. So do you really expect me to go and maybe, let's say, get money somewhere else? Yes, the reality is there, but let's look at the capita income of different parents in the whole country. It's there, yes, and we embrace it, we love it. But I've told you that you really realize that 80% student learners come without laptops at campus. I think Priscilla can bear me witness with that.
But you see, again, like you say, for example, through school, even at the university, you know that there are people who come with a complete bank slip. There are people who come with half a bank slip. There are even people who report without having paid a single penny on the tuition. Oh, and you know, even in the gadget area, you know that there are people with laptops and people who do not have. But that has not stopped these universities from allowing all these categories of people to come to the university. Those that have use what they have. Those that do not have, universities have computer laboratories, and indeed these schools can adopt computer laboratories. And normally, I think almost all, most of, sorry about that low volume situation, almost all the schools have computer laboratories. We can use some of these resources because it is not necessarily that it's like a pen that everyone must have one. We could use general devices at the school, not so.
Yes, thank you so much. I love the fact that you mentioned laboratories. So government would maybe restock more computers in different schools to help learners, because these computer laboratories are accessed by everyone, and every course, let me talk about secondary. Every class at least has that opportunity. So government should restock more computers in different secondary schools, in different institutions, other than coming up with a strategy that now we are going to introduce the use of phones in secondary schools, because not all parents will be able to buy the phones. You get the point. And you look at, I would love the host to allow me share something. We like, all our capita income is different. I'm earning a different salary, you're earning a different salary. So let's look at parents in the different regions of the country. These people are poor, they cannot even afford books. I work with Star Education, and we go to the fields, we go to different regions in the country, and we have classroom observations. But then you reach a school and you're like, oh my God. So before government coming up with that, let them maybe restock different computers in the different systems, in the different schools, so that all learners can access and do research using the computers, instead of them saying, now let's introduce the use of phones. Because even besides that, these learners go through secondary without phones, but later at campus, these phones maybe can later come in. But then if you say that we are introducing phones in secondary schools, I really don't second that. And I am so sad about it. Yes, because we go to the fields and we see different things. You reach somewhere and you're like, oh my God, this is really poor. You find schools, you find a school. Actually, let me even say this. There are some teachers that don't even have smartphones. They don't have them. So how do you tell such to teach a child with a smartphone? And besides, even when these like, let's say the learners from good families come with their phones, the iPhones, and me, I'm a teacher, I don't have the good phone. So you really see that there's a lot to do besides this strategy of coming in with phones. There's a lot.
Thank you so much, Patience, for that. It's kind of quite elaborate, but I want to bring in Joachim here. Yeah, interesting conversation we have around this whole mobile phones and by extension the technological improvement, especially at the academic level, lower levels of learning. I want to push the conversation to been talking about regulation. One of the things that usually emerge with technology and mobile phones is cyberbullying and mental health issues. Like she mentioned about she talked about us people who may not be able to have these mobile phones and having pressure from the colleagues that have them. Then you can talk about maybe these people are trying to socialize on the social medias and people are posting funny things about colleagues, and these are things that can affect the child mentally and psychologically. How can we, in any case, we have some of these devices, especially now they are available at institutions of learning. How can some of these challenges be addressed in a society where technology cannot be denied?
Yes, thank you so much. First and foremost, I will supplement what my sister just concluded with. That as government is looking at that implementation of bringing phones, of allowing students to come to school with phones, first and foremost, some teachers, just like my sister said, they don't have smartphones. Some government-aided schools are in poor, actually bad structures. Thirdly, some parents cannot afford having that smartphone for themselves. So do you expect them to manage buying smart gadgets for the students? So it will be hard somehow, but just like she said, if government was wise enough, they would equip government schools with enough computers, enough laboratory computers, so that every student can access whatever digital education they want to acquire from the computer labs. But this system of buying phones for our students, and yet we are surviving on a daily meal and other things. Even we parents are not even managing to buy those ones. It will be kind of hectic. It will be hectic, and not everyone will manage them. Secondly, you need to know, you need to know and believe it, that there are those students who go to school even without enough requirements. Without enough requirements, books and other things, other requirements, found them at school, and through a long hardship of struggling to find those requirements. So government should think deeper before implementing this, and they should, when these guys are debating, they debate considering themselves. They never want to know who is me in the village and how I'm surviving. But honestly speaking, if I have 4 kids, 4, 5, and I don't have the money to buy phones, how am I going to manage this? How am I going to survive? Personally, I have a small phone. I have a small phone like this one as a parent, and I have 4 kids. Am I going to manage buying them a phone? Definitely no. A cheapest phone now goes for something like 350. So if you have 4 kids, it means you'll have to prepare yourself with 1.4 to buy those 4 phones. So, which will be quite expensive. Not every parent will manage to buy such a phone. So government would just help us and equip government-aided schools with enough equipments, computers, and allow those students to acquire knowledge from the computer labs.
Priscilla, again, I want to engage in this subject. Look, I don't know whether you love sports, but at this time maybe there's something you're interested in. Maybe the movie industry, maybe I know ladies love a lot, sometimes love a lot of telenovelas, and men do a lot of football and movies and so on. And every other time you speak to a regular parent, they'll tell you, oh, I like maybe Lionel Messi, I like Cristiano Ronaldo, I like this actor, I like this I don't know, musician. I like this. Many of the people that are harnessing their talent to see that they have a better future. And indeed, they are some of the most successful people in terms of earnings and so on in the world and fame. And look here in our society, if we even push the conversation even away from the mobile phones, a typical parent in this country will be a very ardent fan of, I don't know which team, for example, Cassasian supports, but if he's, say, a Manchester United fan, Chelsea or Barcelona, he will spend a night at the cinema hall watching football.
But come back home, find his son left home and went to the football pitch to play some football, and that child will be cane. You were so passionate about the success of Lionel Messi, but you are hindering the journey that could lead your child to that particular success, being a professional footballer. Same thing here. We admire the marvel of people like Elon Musk, people like Mark Zuckerberg, people like, I don't know, Jeff Bezos, people like very many people that are successful in the tech industry, very many people that are successful in innovations around this technological advancement. And we keep on denying our people opportunity to be exposed, which could now enable them to innovate in this particular sector and be some of the powerful global players in some of these realities. Priscilla, aren't we being unfair to our children? We seem to have lost Priscilla because of some technical challenges, but I hope she'll be connecting in back really soon. And as we wait for her to connect back, I want to bring in Madam Nyakecho as we wait for Priscilla to talk to us. If you look at the way we are operating in the country, other than talking about the mobile phones, what do you think are some of the other realities that are lacking in the education system as it operates today that we can really bring up to make sure that we have better citizens, both of our country, but also the globe, since we live now in a global village? But also, what are some of the things you think can be included in the education we have today such that we have a better way of output at the universities and any other level of learning?
All right, thank you so much, Philip. When we look at the education system in Uganda, a lot of things are lacking. What I would beg the government before implementing the proposal that they are planning to implement, I think they would first look at the other things that are lacking in the education sector rather than bringing in the phones. There are computer lessons in different country, but just a few schools have access to computers. Computer is one of the subjects that are taught in different schools. It's even examined at UNEB, but a few schools have access to computers. Before implementing this proposal into schools, I would beg the government to first properly plan and make sure that almost all schools in the country have access to computers, because computer is one of the subjects that is even examined at UNEB, but few schools have access to computers. Like, allowing phones in schools is good to a smaller extent, but to a larger extent, it's not good, because a few students themselves can easily operate them. If there were computers in all the schools, even government-aided schools within the urban settings and rural settings, the grades would be much, much better. Then, infrastructure. Different schools, especially in rural areas, have poor infrastructures. Many children in different rural areas study from trees, study from tree shades. They lack proper classrooms. They lack. So implementing phones wouldn't be a priority at the moment as Uganda, since Uganda is a low-developed country. I think if that is to be implemented, it's not now. It could be implemented in the future, but it cannot work for Uganda as for now. It's very good that the world we are evolving in is, they are evolving in a digital world, but for Uganda, it cannot work because a lot is lacking. I remember those days in the 2000s.
I think Dora has experienced some network issues out there, and we shall be getting her back a little later as the situation stabilizes. I want to bring you the patience. You see, we are talking about this, the world where we are, something I talked about earlier, where we admire the success of people globally in some of these fields. But when it comes to our children, we are trying to restrict them from being able to take the same lane in sport, in acting, in innovation in these different fields and music and so on. Are we being fair to our kids? And we're the ones that are sponsoring the backwardness that we're experiencing as a society, especially.
Thank you so much. You realize that every time learners get in activities that happen in school, let's say sports, MDD, they really acquire a lot of skills, and some of these activities come in with a lot of privileges, the bursaries, and different things that come along, and those things are really good to the learner. So I really think that we are not we are not trying to limit the children, the young generation that is on or that is yet to come, but rather these different strategies are so good because they really enhance, they add value to the learner. I happen to have had some OGs and OBs that are now thriving in the sports world. They have gone higher. So this is it's really good. It benefits the learners so much. I mean, besides that, everyone has talent. Mr. Moderator and other people here, I believe everyone has their own talent. So if I have talent in singing and there is MDD in school, really go participate, and it takes me higher, because even besides that, these activities come with certificates. And later in the job market, if they ask about any those additional certificates, one can present that certificate, and it adds merit, gives you credit on the panel. So these activities are really nice, and I love the fact that they are in place. They are promoted in different regions of the country. There is a lot of effort that's really put effort that these activities happen. Yes, thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, Patience. Amuge, let's discuss, because again, one of the conversations that have been existent in our society is that access to these gadgets has affected individual craftsmanship, and you realize people want to do everything using gadgets. These university students here want to do their coursework using artificial intelligence. You realize people no longer want to write, they want a machine to write for them. People barely want to do nothing. Do you agree that technology, and indeed if we allowed these gadgets to be used in school, they would have an effect on the craftsmanship of our pupils and students in primary and secondary in terms of limiting their ability to be creative, traditionally write good essays, develop the socialization young people usually have together at break times, playing together in the field and so on? Yes, Priscilla, what's your view of that?
Okay, it's really true. It's a fact that we cannot deny that as much as we want to embrace technology, there are also the demerits that come along with it. But then I love the way the government is trying to balance the technological advancement and then also looking at the people. I talk this basing on the new secondary lower curriculum. You see that the integration of ICT has actually regulated on how the students interact with these gadgets, and at the same time, trying to maintain the creativity, the innovativeness, and then the collaboration among the learners. You see that even if a particular topic is being introduced, there is a bit of an integration of ICT in it. And then later they are exposed to challenge themselves to come up with solutions to the problems that could be facing their society. So I feel that as much as ICT could look like posing a threat to the craftsmanship, but then there is already a measure that is on ground to see that it's regulated. Because if you tell a learner to come up with, let's say, an app to solve a problem, yes, first of all, the learner needs to have the knowledge of how to operate that app. That is where the integration part comes in. But then, to put those different applications together to make that app is where we are looking at the critical thinking capacity of this particular learner. You find that this particular learner will not need the phone to think, but then will need to use the brain to think so hard to see which different parts can I put together to come up with this particular app in place. So as much as it's looking like a threat, but there is already a mechanism that is in place to actually see that it handles or it tries as much as possible to tackle that threat that it tries to pose to the society. Even if we say that students reach a time and then they don't want to do the work. They want to do the copy and paste because AI is there. So I don't need to research. But then you'll find that critical universities have gotten mechanism of actually identifying an AI-oriented work. Like you can easily just see from the outline and know that this particular learner asked AI for this information. And then you'll also look at the presentation of a particular student, and then you're able to assess that this particular student was able to do research, gathering information from different sources, and has come up with a write-up. That's why you see there is a distinction between someone is having a 24 out of a 25. You with your AI, you're having 0.8 out of 20. That means there's already a mechanism that is checking on the issue of the craftsmanship. So you find that us embracing technology shouldn't necessarily be a threat that we shall lose the critical thinkers, or the creativeness will disappear because people will just run to the internet to go and get what they want, and that is all. No, they have to also first sit down and rearrange that work. So I see it's more creativity for someone to sit and organize that particular work to come up with something better. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Now, colleagues, I want us to
speak to three things. In the long term, because in the end, our people are going to be able to access a lot of devices, a lot of, even when they don't get them at school, at home, the mothers, the fathers are able to give them the gadgets, the parents, the elder brother, elder sister, and even friends. Speak to government and make it aware of the long-term, one, advantages, and two, disadvantages that may arise in the proliferation or the increased use of gadgets in our society, especially by the young people that are still school going. What are some of the challenges or the opportunities that will arise in the long term in our society? I'll start with, I should start with Joachim. What do you think society will be 10, 20 years to come, positively and negatively, if we start allowing mobile phones to be in every other corner of our society?
Thank you so much. Definitely. What I will say is, of course, for a digital world that is growing, the society will grow, it will be digitalized, but the people that will grow in the society will have different minds. That is one. Two, the generations will be unattachable because they will have all the knowledge they have acquired from internet, and so forth. But my biggest worry is 8% of these young pupils that are going to access phones. We might not yield much. They might be spoiled. A few of them will use these gadgets for a purpose that is either financial or other things. Because if you look at the rate at how people, even older people, are getting spoiled because of exposure. And then if you tell me these people who are going to access phones in their primary school, if they are not guided very well by the parents, then just know we shall have a very hardy generation in the future to come. So my appeal to government, they would first hold on this implementation of introducing phones in primary schools. They would first work on installing infrastructures. Some schools are still in sorry states. Some schools are still lacking. They should work on improving the people's wealth. Maybe they can be able to afford. Now imagine, I'm telling you even this, people will be changed. If it is an implementation that maybe it will be compulsory or somehow, people will be forced either to be from schools because they will not be able, they will have failed to buy those gadgets. Others will be forced to go and steal in order for them to find those gadgets. So it will be complicated. Government will just surrender and help us install those computer labs in schools and equip them so that everyone can access at least a computer at their school. If it is the digital education and other things they are planning, they would access those things from school for them to favor even those parents who are unable to buy those gadgets. I told you that not every parent will manage to buy that gadget because gadgets are expensive. A phone goes for the cheapest phone goes for 350, and in the long run, those phones will not last even for a term. They will be stealing them from those students along the way. Even fellow students will steal those phones, and you find a parent being strained looking for another gadget to buy, even when they are lacking what to eat at home and other scholastic materials. So the generation in the future, some will benefit, others will be completely finished.
Thank you. Thank you for submission of questions. What do you see happening in the long run? Budgets everywhere, people interacting with them, and we're talking a lot of things to do with morality, to do with information, to do with exposure. What do you see happening?
Thank you so much. We are yet.
Come again?
But then, yes, the technology is good, it helps learners with research, but then you realize that still learners will not use actually the phone so well. Remember, there are different apps that have come, AI, ChatGPT, and to mention. So you realize that once a learner has been given, let's say, work to go and research on, remember those days we would use, libraries. Libraries are in different schools to help learners carry on research. But if a learner has a phone in school and they say now, this is what you're going to research on, this learner will chap run to ChatGPT, those different apps, then search quickly and then get the answers. And then you realize that once a learner uses this, there is actually no critical thinking because these apps give you the introduction, body, and conclusion. But then I would prefer that the learners actually putting in use the libraries, going to do research, blah, blah. That would really be better. And besides, this use of phone strategy in different secondary schools.
If you allow me. If you allow me. You see, these mobile phones, see, to the libraries, how learners go to the libraries.
We also have online libraries and bookstores, and learners can make use of these online resources to make sure they boost their knowledge and get the particular knowledge. In other words, they are only being saved of the burden of carrying a textbook and you know, every other book they have to pick. They will just have it on their mobile phone. Isn't that a good thing?
I mentioned something to do with maybe government restocking different schools. Government should come up with a strategy, maybe add on the different computers into different schools to help learners that also can't access laptops to go into the computer laboratory, maybe be able to carry on their research. But if now we have learners have phones in schools or in classes, you realize that these phones will create unnecessary competition. Because now if the other learner comes from a good family, the family can be able to provide, let's say, an iPhone, and the other one maybe comes from, maybe has a techno phone. So there is a lot of unnecessary competition in the classes. And then those that don't have will be forced to go and steal these phones from people because they want to have them in class, you know, show off. Maybe it's an instruction. Let's say it's a law given, you get? So you realize that this new strategy is really good, but then there are lots of advantages and disadvantages. And then even besides, let's look into different regions of the country. Do they have internet? Yes, we've said we can have the phones in schools, but is there internet? Because you can realize that even in the computer labs, the network is always down. So now if we say that let every learner have access to a phone, is there internet for research? Because as we are on now, all of us are using Wi-Fi or data. But thank you so much. An example of our colleague who has just gone off. Let's say she had an internet problem. So if she's in that particular district and the learners there have phones, will they use internet to connect and do their research, you know, everything? And then also you realize that these phones also create a big education gap. Because now the teacher will be in trying to explain something, and this learner is on phone. Maybe even the learner is chatting, let's say, with a boyfriend or girlfriend or a colleague somewhere. So you realize that it really has a lot. This strategy has a lot, like it has a lot of strings attached to it. But I would rather say that government should rather come up with different strategies to enhance effective learning. Yes, we are in the digital world, but this can, yes, it's a proposal, but I think it should be systematic, not enforce it right now, rather, because now, if it's enforced now, parents are going to be forced to buy phones. And maybe some of these parents, actually, most of them buy the phones. So the system should be systematic, that the future young people will be able to use the phones. Because by that time, I believe 10 years from now, accessibility will be very easy as compared to now. Because you're not just going to come from nowhere and say, now we want phones. You get that? We want phones. So I'll be forced, me as a parent with a low capital income, to you know, go borrow money, blah, blah, those things, those stories. You get the point. So it's really a good strategy, but it has a lot of strings attached to it. The competition, confusion in class, education gap, you get. So government can come up with different strategies. And government can also try to even motivate the teachers, first of all, by giving these funds to the teachers, because these teachers are really demotivated. That's why we come in as STAR education to foster intrinsic motivation in teachers. These teachers, we've seen teachers go on strike because of less pay. So government can come up with different ideas, give the teachers smartphones, you see? Because Priscilla talked about intended laws. Will the laws come on board even when the teachers don't know how to use the phones? You get the point. So you realize that there is a lot of strings attached to it, but government should provide funds to the teachers. Let them start with the teachers before putting it on us, the learners. You get the point? If that is done, then it is okay. And I think this should be systematic. It should come within maybe, let's say, 20 years from now. Yes, I mean, this is the 21st century and we need the skills, you get. So it should come later, not now.
Thank you, Patience. Thank you, Patience.
That is important. I like that you say in 20 years. I hope you you know what 20 years is, because 20 years ago, that was 2004. I don't know where you were, but 20 years is, okay, colleagues, unfortunately, our time is very much fast spent. We have about 10 minutes to get out of here. I want in these final 10 minutes to have at least 2 minutes each to each of us to give us your final remarks about the topic and what you think can be the summarily the way forward in this particular discussion as you give us your parting shots. Yes, I'll start with, let me start with Priscilla. Priscilla, do we still have you? I think Priscilla has also experienced some network challenges, but I know she will be joining us back. Let me start with you, Kimbes, the Cassessian. Mr. Joachim, talk to us. Give us your final remarks on this as you give us your parting shots.
Yeah, thank you so much. My final remark about this is the implementation is good, but let me hope it's not going to work now, because the parents still have a lot of work to do. Themselves are not managing themselves. Teachers themselves are not in a good state. They are still lacking a lot. And now if you say a teacher is going to teach a student who is holding iPhone 15 Pro Max, phone of 35,000, then it will be quite challenging. Then secondly, as government is looking at implementing these funds, they should first consider and look deeper into what will come alongside it. It should have which apps will be used and who will regulate them. Then finally, with the parents, if it is implemented as government is suggesting, then with the parents, it will have to start with us to make sure the child you have sent to school with a smartphone, which app is he or she using in that particular gadget. Otherwise, these children are ours, not for government still, even when government's demand is them as theirs, but we have 78% ownership of those children. So if they get spoiled, it is still us to suffer with those children. So parents will make sure they take care of those gadgets in order to keep their children in good shape. Otherwise, thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much, Cassessian, Joachim, for those amazing views. Patience, to your final remarks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, moderator. I'm glad that you had ideas about this topic. One thing I would love to tell us is, besides government coming up with this strategy of bringing funds in schools, there are different NGO sectors, non-government organizations that have different strategies put in place to create a safe learning environment for the learners. I think government should add on that, should start from there and maybe put more frameworks, equip the different spaces that are trying to create a world where teachers love teaching and learners love learning, instead of them coming up with a new strategy on their own, yet there's a lot to do. So I would also recommend, if this is put in place, I would recommend also consider parenting seminars to help parents understand their role in managing their children's access to technology, because you realize that most of the parents are unaware of what their children are doing with these devices. You realize that there are different apps put on phones installed. So the government should also come up with parenting seminars to help the learners, to help the learners, yes, and parents to guide the different learners in different regions of the country. And then the other thing I would also say is, government should actually restock computer laboratories with different computers, with more and more, so that every learner, because we realize that there are schools that have let's say per class, let's say 200 students. So government should look at ways of putting more computers into different systems, different schools, so that all learners have access and carry on their research in different regions of the country. And then also government can also restock libraries, because let me tell you one thing, something read from a book is never forgotten. But something that you just go on AI, blah, blah, chap, chap, you're done. Because actually when you're given coursework as a learner or homework, let's say, and you go and do on AI, the goal is to complete and hand in. So government should restock libraries so that learners can go there, do more research, revise, because revising helps you to think critically about what you should answer, what you should attempt, how do I start? Because AI provides us with introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So as a learner out there, government should help learners in that way, work with the different non-governmental organization spaces that are trying to create a world where teachers love teaching and learners love learning. And let me tell you one thing, we can surely come out of this, but with the right procedures, the right strategies put in place, motivating teachers, fostering intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, like different pay, incentives for the teachers. You know, the head teachers do a lot of work. These teachers do a lot of work out there. They are the ones that, let me tell you, there's a school that I went to and I found, it was, I think, in the northern region. The P1 class had 400 learners and there were only 4 teachers in the whole school. So government should do what? Should bring in more teachers on board to help these schools that have less learners, so that that have less teachers, so that learners can be able to access education, quality education, so that learners receive enough education in the whole week, the whole term, you know, because we have assessments that we carry on with different regions in the country as STAR education, Uganda. So government really has a lot to do other than coming up with a new strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For sharing patience, UCU STAR education. Thank you so much for those amazing views and for the time you've made for the conversation today on the opportunities and challenges that face the proposal to allow mobile phones to be used in schools in Uganda. Mr. Wambale Joachim, thank you so much for your time and for the amazing views you put out to the conversation as regards the allowing of the use of mobile phones in school. I see Priscilla. Priscilla, in a minute, give us something to go with. Priscilla. I see we have you back. Priscilla, you able to hear me?
Okay. I think one thing we need to put in mind is that every implementation that we tend to push forward always has some obstacles. But then that shouldn't be like a dragging force to stop us from actually attaining the intended goal. I know government trying to push on the use of mobile phones in school could seem to be quite challenging. But then I believe that before government comes up with, also look at those possible outcomes that could arise, and at the same time, they're able to come up with mechanism to see that at least they try to overcome those challenges that could be possible when policy is actually put into place. So even I believe with the different challenges that my colleagues have discussed that could come as a result of government allowing the use of phones in school, let's not forget that is to help develop our country. And then if we really need that development, then we should not only look at the other bad side of what government is trying to bring on board. But also let's look at how does it positively impact our society. And then those challenges that are coming, that come on board, I believe there are ways we can minimize them, or there are mechanisms that can be put in place to regulate and to see that at the end of the day, we achieve the intended goals for these particular policies that come in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Priscilla Mugi for those amazing views and for making time to join the conversation today. Once again, the Cassessian, thank you so much for joining the conversation and for the amazing views. And Patience Bisikwa, Sharon, thank you so much for your amazing views and for joining the conversation today. I really appreciate the voices you put out there, and indeed, I know a thing or two will be picked from this conversation by whoever has the power to enforce or put something into action somewhere at the tables of policy in this country. Thank you so much. And once again, I want to send my special thanks to the audience, to the people that are watching us here, and thank you for joining the conversation, and keep your feedback and responses coming on our different social media platforms to see that we get your side of the story or what you think about these particular events that are unfolding in the country. Special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for always putting this together, and special thanks to the technical team that make sure all this work is done and it is of good quality and we're able to have it in time, and everyone is able to interact with this particular conversation. Once again, I'm Philip Melissa. Be well. See you again.